Hello, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Sunrise. It is this morning. I'm Chamberlain also.
Good morning and welcome. I'm Kayla Magwa.
Yeah, 27 degrees centigrade here in Abuja, but this right here, unfortunately, not a good tale. It's I know the name is a little tricky, and you have to listen twice to get it. Lambarimi Wind Power Project in Katsina State. Well, ordinarily, you should have been gushing about all of this, but incidentally, it points to one of the reasons why blackout up north. Now, this, we understand, was supposed to have been, was awarded in June 2009 by the Ministry of Power. And this windmill project has 37 turbines designed to generate 10 megawatts of electricity for Katsina State. But TCN say that initially, the project had a 12-month timeline for completion, but due to security-related incidents in 2012, which was at the peak of execution, the work was delayed for a protracted time, and they've missed several deadlines ever since then. They say they cited security concerns.
I mean, it was supposed to be a 12-month project, but now look at it. Just abandoned, not working.
Now more than 12 years.
There's so many missed opportunities, so many missed opportunities in this country. This could be the solution to a lot of the issues that we are facing right now in northern Nigeria. But because, well, security reasons, but those are things that should be handled. Those are things that should be thought about. I don't know, when I think about government officials and I wonder, when you want to do a legacy project, what are you thinking? What do you think a legacy project is? You know, it's not, it's something that you should always be remembered for. Katsina has had governor after governor after governor, has had a lot of people from this state who have held important office in this country. That was an opportunity for whoever you are from Katsina State to do something that your people would always remember you for. And say, look, when such and such a person was in office, this was what the person did. It's a missed opportunity. Now we're talking about a power outage in the north, and we're going to talk about that in the course of our conversation today. But very missed opportunity and very disappointing. It's abandoned, it's just fallow, just there, you know. But it's something that anyone in office in Katsina, and if you're from Katsina, if you're from Lambarimi, you should start to talk to your government officials. Start to push these ideas to them. These are things that can be sorted out. Don't allow government officials just come in, spend a little time, and then leave. No, these are things that we should push them to focus on. It's a very disappointing story from
Well,
Katsina.
who knows if there will be light at the end of the tunnel, because the Governor Diko Rada, we understand, has written to President Tinubu to see how they can hand over this to the state. Yeah, so if that happens, who knows? Just maybe.
It'll be so sad if we have to. You know. Sometimes, Chamberlain, we bring up these pictures, and you know, sometimes it always feels like we've talked about this before. You know?
Yeah, because in Nigeria, you talk about the same things almost all the time.
We keep having to repeat the same things.
No one started talking about petrol scarcity.
Yes.
In this country. It will shock many people.
Yes.
It go down memory
You know,
lane.
it's disappointing that we have to always repeat the same things over and over again. We have to, well, you know, they say push. You have to continue until something happens. So we'll continue to remind you of your failings.
Yeah.
Until something is done.
Exactly. So that's why we keep tabs on all of these things. And at the end of the day, we expect the authorities to take positive steps to ensure that at the end of the day, the people ultimately benefit from all of this. All right, let's move on and show you this particular clip. You know, I know I have said this several times, and again, it appears as though we've talked about this over and over again.
And we're bringing it up again.
But this particular one, for those who saw it, it was online, and so the gentleman who was behind the scenes capturing this, just listen to this.
Trying to remove the number plate of a vehicle stylishly without the person even knowing. This is Nigeria VIO VIO. VIO. Is it the work they ask them to be doing? VIO.
The people in front to make sure the driver doesn't move. The person engaging the person suspects that, well, one or two things might be amiss with the car, either documentation or something. So what they do, the person standing there is, the person behind removes the plate number for the vehicle. And so, we're saying this plate because I've seen this happen right here.
Why is he doing
in the
that?
FCT.
Why is he removing the vehicle number?
So what they do is, because if you're stubborn and they feel you don't want to comply with whatever they're asking of you, they will get the upper hand. So they remove the number plates there and then go away with it. They expect you to, whichever way, you will have to come back to them. So this is tantamount to stealing. This is, I don't know which other adjective to describe some of this. This is brigandage. This is a typology of banditry.
So you can't move. You have to come back.
That's, you see those guys in front. They block you. They make sure they stay in front of you to distract you.
Okay.
So when they distract you, you won't be able to look at your rearview mirror to see what's going on behind you. And sometimes if your vehicle is going to move and the traffic light passes you, they just quickly snatch it while it's about to, because they already have their hands on it. So before you move, they quickly snatch it. And then you will be forced to either turn back or stop or go talk to them. And when that happens, you know that at the end of the day, you'll part with something which you may not be happy with. So
there has to be another way to get compliance. This is the menace. There has to be other ways to get compliance. Does it have to look like this all the time?
So when in FCT, that court judgment came, if you know how people heaved a sigh of relief in terms of, thank goodness, good riddance to whatever. But this is unfortunate. And this, I tell you, still happens in different parts of this country. That's why you got this one here.
When I think about it, there's a lot when it comes to road usage in Nigeria and compliance, because I know that we have a lot of recalcitrant drivers, a lot of people who do not want to obey the rules and regulations. I know this. There are many people who do not get their papers together. There are many people who just entered the car and put it on the road and try to make us more. Many Nigerians have this way of living where we ride it until the wheels fall off. Let's try until something happens, A lot of Nigerians do that. So sometimes it's important to have people checking, what you're doing on the road. Yeah. It's pretty important. But you see, what's happened over the years is that it's been abused. It's not done properly. And then it's failed in the sense that, we've not been able to get the Nigerian person to buy into why they should do the right things. We like to put regulations, but we don't get people to trust us and buy into what it is that we're trying to sell. So I think that is, in many ways, a very major failure. And these are examples, like you're seeing on your screen right now, examples of ways that you have failed to get people to buy into what you're doing. You now have to resort to, Chamberlain called it brigandage, criminal behavior.
This is criminal activity, right? This is the height of it.
You now have to resort to this in the discharge of your duty. It's all a mess. A lot of reorientation has to be done, whether on the part of the vehicle inspection people and also on the part of Nigerians. We have to start thinking outside the box. In governance, how do we get the buy-in of the people so that when we say, get your papers together, do not buy expired tires, do not ride your car with expired tires, make sure that everything is correct. Let them be able to understand why these things are important and why they should adhere to these things so that we don't have to resort to this sort of behavior. It's a failure of governance and one that has to be addressed really soon.
Yes, people have got to get their papers. Of course, you have to be valid on the road. But there are several ways, I dare say, that those authorities can check and make sure people comply. There are 1,001 ways. And they should know better than, because, when they get their cronies, politicians into all these places who are beholden to them, they feel they owe you and I absolutely nothing. And that's why when you get on the roads, you're just traumatized. You are so traumatized on a regular basis, the average road user or driver out there. And this is after the decision from the Federal High Court in Abuja banning DRTS and VIO. So a leopard cannot change his spots. This is what they're doing in another state. So who knows if a citizen, public defender, can go to court and see how they could ensure that some states also, well, not get their comeuppance, but ensure that residents are not subjected to this kind of. This is barbaric.
I don't understand this behavior. Well, every day something new. Every day we see something.
Reminds me of every day for the thief.
One day for the owner.
Let's take you through some of the dailies this morning.
Here are some of the papers we got for you this morning. We'll start off with Nigerian Tribune. Northern governors reject tax reform bill. And the writer here says, meet traditional rulers, CDS over insecurity. That is a big lead on the front page here today. And then on to New Telegraph, similar narrative. Northern governors reject proposed tax reform bill amendment. That is a big lead on the front page of New Telegraph. The writer say bill against North's interest. Urge FG to address power failure. Pledged to tackle challenges out of school children. So that one you also find right there. From then on to the Daily Times. We are not averse to policies for Nigeria's growth development ascribed to northern governors. The first of the writer here says, call for equity, fairness in implementation of all national policies, programs. Want FG relevant agencies to urgently address current power blackouts affecting most northern states, urge citizens to remain calm on present economic hardship affecting the country. From Daily Times to Daily Independent, FG to establish super grid to guarantee stable electricity. Discloses why national power grid collapses frequently. Considers alternative power source for northern states. Security operatives to guard workers restoring power to north. Have a look at blueprints. Blackout on the north. Tinubu orders aerial cover for engineers fixing vandalized Shiroro Kaduna line. We're working on alternative power source. Adelabu. Northern governors, ACL, Falgore, lament plight. So that you all see right here this morning. Well, that's all there is to it.
Take a look at the Vanguard newspaper this morning. I think that's the story that's standing out for me, and it's this one about Sanu and Nasu. A lot of it from page 5 of the Vanguard this morning. Withheld pay. Sanu, Nasu shut down varsities nationwide. Again. We'll keep saying it. We'll keep talking about it. We won't get tired. We'll continue saying it until something is sorted out. These are our children. This is the life of our country. This is the future of our country. We're toying with it. Well, the headline there from the Vanguard, UNN, other varsities in Southeast to join the strike today. Semester examination on hold at the Bayero University, Kano. 2.1 million students affected. And we're seeing this one from the federal government. We're disappointed at Sanu and Nasu over the strike. The federal government expressing their disappointment there. But more on that from page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. And then, of course, the Nigerian Tribune. We're seeing this. We're going to be talking a lot about northern Nigeria today, especially because of this power situation, and find out where the fault lines are and what should be done about it. But the Nigerian Tribune is leading with northern governors rejecting this tax reform bill. Morning from page 15. Meet traditional rulers and CBS over insecurity. Northern Nigeria really needs to get itself together. Well, the whole country in many ways. One government on several levels and several regions of the country need to be able to start to look inward to see how they can take care of themselves. But northern Nigeria really plagued by an insecurity that's lasted for so long, too long, and one that has splintered into so many dimensions, affecting the lives of millions of people. I think in many ways, governors in northern Nigeria and also other parts of the country have to start thinking about the fact that we are looking at our people. We are here to serve these people. How do we make their lives better? How do we fix these problems and plan for a future that actually will cater to the lives of the people? It's a very important conversation. And if no one is thinking about it right now, we should remind them. Start to petition your lawmakers. Start to speak up in your states. Let's stop allowing these people come and have a holiday for 4 years or 8 years and then go home and retire and start to call themselves elder statesmen. We have to be able to ensure that while they're in office, they do the needful. And you have to start speaking up about it. So yeah, I mean, they're rejecting this tax reform bill. You can get all the details on page 15. But my talk this morning is about governance, especially in northern Nigeria. Every northerner, you're a vocal people, I grew up amongst you. You know how to speak. You know how to hold people accountable. You have to start speaking up a little bit more because this holiday has to end. Our country has changed and everybody has to change along with it.
All right, so there you go. We'll go to break and then we're back in just a moment. We'll focus on some of these issues. Stay on with us.
The world is moving. This is the 21st century. And we believe that the most effective way of supplying uninterrupted, functional, stable, and reliable electricity to the northern part of Nigeria is through our distributed power model, whereby each of the northern states will have an embedded utility solar scale solar source. All the 20 states will be insulated and immune from each other. Once we have, and we have actually made progress in this, as we have interested contractors and financiers that are ready to install 100 megawatts each for each of the 20 northern states, which is scalable to 50 megawatts at first, then upgraded to 100 megawatts. We are working on establishing what is called a super grid, which is a backup or failover optional grid. If the national grid has a problem, there will be an alternative route through which power can be transmitted. That is what we are working on. Then lastly is the fact that the world has moved beyond having a centralized grid. Grid must be regionalized. We must have state grids so that each of the regionalized grid will be insulated from each other. A problem in a particular line will not affect the others. That is what we are working on. Until that is done, we believe that we'll keep managing what we have and reduce the frequent occurrence of the grid disturbance.
Well, to break that down, we've got Mr. Kingsley Odo here with us. He is the GMD CEO of Plantrix Energy Group. He's also the former advisor to former Minister of Power. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning, Chamberlain. Good morning, Kayla.
Morning.
Good morning, Nigeria.
You know, for many who listen to what he just said now, as far as they're concerned, they think it's sophistry. It doesn't suffice for them. So all of this talk, can anybody simply make of this?
Well, for the long term, Chamberlain, I believe what he said is valid for the long term. But I believe the concerns now is where we are, right? How do we deal with the challenges of the embarrassing power situation in the north? 19 states of the north are currently experiencing blackout. It means that, again, loads of things are suffering. Socioeconomic life, it's hampered. Lots of businesses are closing down. So many issues. And again, it's been long in the works.
So that's the question I was going to ask.
Right.
When you say for the long term, and I thought, for the longer term,
yes.
Is that to say that the Minister of Power never saw this coming?
Well, It's neither here nor there. So first, recall that the issues on ground is largely the issues of vandalism and banditry and all of those things up north, and even sabotage, if you like. So if you put all that in the mix, it means that even though you've seen this coming for a bit, your ability to deal with it is going to be challenged. The reason is very clear. One, how do you deal with lines that are far in remote areas and you have communities who don't own those infrastructure, and then you have people who come and cut those towers? I mean, it doesn't. You don't cut those towers in a day. You cut it, and then. So I'm sure that people in those communities have to own those assets. On the government side, how do you provide security to cover lines that are in those very remote locations?
So when Parliament is jumping, when you say you don't just cut it in a day.
No, you don't.
It is over time. It suggests that this might have been, I mean, there's been several reports about grid collapse for obtained time. So I would have thought, I don't know if it's utopian though, that this ministry such as this, power, would have sat down to evaluate and say, wait a minute, if this grid keeps collapsing like this, how do we avoid an embarrassing situation further? You take a look at your assets. You do your SWOT analysis to find out, look, what do we do to make sure if this happens, we do this. If this happens, we do this. Are we saying that doesn't happen?
Okay, so typically there are radial systems and ring systems, or whatever, maybe triangular systems. Now, radial systems mean that it's just a one-way traffic. If there is a collapse at this point, if there is a cut at this point, the entire downstream suffers. Now, the ring system means that if this one is hampered, at some locations we can always backfeed and then cover this area while we restore the situation here. But what we have largely in our grid is that it's largely radial. Maybe for the Benin, Oshobo, and all of those areas, that we've got the ring system. But largely what we have in the Shiroro, Kaduna, Kano line is radial. It means that if anything happens upstream, downstream suffers. So I believe that to deal with this, Chamberlain, is we have to now begin to create systems that are maybe N-1, creating redundancies, N-2, means that I can backfeed from two other locations if something happens here. But that is not the case, and that is huge, huge investment, Chamberlain. So it means that, yes, we are going to continue to have these kind of scenarios as long as we have this single lines radial system driving our networks. Let me say this. The new act, the act that had just been signed, 2023 going to 2024, empowered the states, right, to be able to own it. Create your...
Not own this particular infrastructure, but get theirs.
Create yours. There is a way you can work and collaborate with existing, maybe TCN, for example, to say, look, in your infrastructure within my state, I can ring fence this and pay you whatever. So there's a business arrangement that can happen. Tell me, Chamberlain, I have not seen any state that has been able to do what they need to do to make sure there's a power availability ring-fenced within their states.
I thought you mentioned Edo.
Yeah, I mean, it's all of the works. We've not seen, okay, Abia because of geometrics, right? Yeah. But beyond that, everything is still in the works. What I expect is states should be mandated, because it is sad that you can attract the investment, you can create the opportunities, and then ring-fence your state. Because if you do that, and state by state have this buckets of ecosystems that generate electricity, it will free the grid from these constant challenges. And that's what the Honorable Minister was saying. He was saying that, look, within each of the northern states, again, what is the energy mixes in the northern states will be largely hydro and solar. Now, you can, within those states, agree to say, look, we can invest heavily in the solar infrastructure, which is said that, look, 100 megawatts in each of those 19 states. We believe those, we hope that those investments, come through. But if it doesn't, we're all going to keep relying on the national grid that is archaic. Infrastructure is over 30 years and more. Believe me, it's a challenge for a nation. I'm scared to even run this kind of responsibilities, because you find out that you cannot do what you need to do because the infrastructure is old, and revamping this infrastructure requires huge investment. Government does not have that fund. So how do we deal with this? Chicken, egg, which one comes first?
I mean, I was listening to the minister talk about how the states are supposed to be able to start, taking up a lot of these responsibilities, and in line with the Act, just so they can start to own their own electricity infrastructure and actually start to generate electricity for themselves. But it does sound like it sounds like something that will take some time.
Hila,
is there an immediate solution to this?
Hila, there's the will to do these things. I don't think these governors really are thinking about these things. Because if you are, you don't need to raise the money within the states, create an enabling environment, and bring investors in. They would bring this investment, they will create this infrastructure or build this infrastructure, and then you will find yourself reaping. But no, it's not in the thinking. I've engaged with governors, they're not thinking about this. I've had 3 governors I've spoken to. It has to be at the forefront of your conversation. There has to be the will to bring this to the fore, and then bring the right investments. Investors look for money. They want to invest so that they can bring monies in and make their monies. If you don't create the enabling environment, how will an investor come?
And with the major challenges that they're facing in northern Nigeria, security being at the forefront of that. But I wanted to talk about something that you mentioned while we're having this conversation earlier, and that was about when you see vandalism, and it's a very important point to note. You can't cut that thing down in a day, and you can't sneak it away. Everybody sees you when you're doing it. I remember at the Gwarimpa axis, those lights. I remember one time some vandals started sawing them down, and you would see them doing it, but of course, because of the way we are here in the FCT, we would call, and the NSCDC were around and things like that, and then the guarding of these infrastructure. In northern Nigeria, let me find out from you.
Yes.
Is the NSCDC still guarding these things, these infrastructure that we're hearing were being vandalized constantly over time?
So we must separate first the act of sabotage and vandalism. Okay. And then, of course, so we need to put the criminality in its place, and that's where it belongs. Up north is a little tricky. How remote and how far apart and how quiet and how distant those towers are. I'm sure you've gone to the north before. Yeah. They run into the very remote, arid lands, and they just keep going. So sometimes it's actually very difficult for even NCDC to cover and monitor and look at all of those things.
Elections hold in all those places.
No, hold on. Let me land.
Elections hold in all those nooks and even in Jaji Maji, which is the farthest part of northern Nigeria I've ever been to. Elections hold there.
So the point
NSCDC is there during the elections. So the infrastructure in all those places, who's guarding? You must
understand that election holds in just pockets of areas where I can come, and once in a while I can come and have elections which would happen maybe once every 4 years for off-cycle or in-cycle. But you must separate that from monitoring towers all over the country or government assets all over the country, and means that you have to constantly monitor these assets. Now, again, because of the kinds of people in those communities who don't seem to own those assets and look at them and monitor them, it becomes very challenging for you when some guy comes today, unless, again, they bring all the tools. It's possible. They can bring all the tools, welding machines and all those cutting machines, and then they cut. Once that tower starts to tip over, the line breaks. And once the line breaks, it backfeeds, and then it's like a pack of cards. Once you start, everything keeps just failing until there is a national blackout. So it's a big challenge, and we need to deal with it from two fronts. One, while we strengthen the national infrastructure, governors, not only in northern Nigeria, all governors across this country, they have to look at that act and not use politics to say they're acting when there are no deadlines to making things happen. Every state should be mandated to generate at least, if nothing, 200 megawatts or 300 megawatts. You must, with a timeline. And every governor must be held accountable to making sure that that happens. Because if you're not looking at it depending on the grid at every time when you've been given access to creating structures of energy mixes that can help your state to industrialize, to improving your socio-economic standards and all of this, but you do nothing, no, it's not acceptable.
You were talking about the buy-in of the people, and I've said it over and over. I've always believed that it's a failure of governance if the people don't buy into what you're selling. If they don't understand why what you're doing is important, you have failed as well.
I heard you say that.
As a leader, I've always believed this. How do we change things around? We're here now. How do we get the people to understand why these things should not be vandalized or sabotaged? So that when I see someone cutting down a pole or stealing something, I know to call and say, oh, look at what's going on, because these things are happening in the full glare of the people who live in these communities.
Yes.
How do we get the people to start to think differently?
So it's beyond national orientation. Every time we speak to national orientation, the national orientation agencies have to do the work. We are people in our small communities, and the clan heads and leaders of those communities, everybody needs to put their hands on this deck to make it happen. Because I cannot have people in my community who, the thief, for example, or the vandal or the saboteur is from my community. He comes with his motorbike and he starts to cut that thing, and then we speak our language and we're happy with it. Oh yes, we're dealing with them, but ultimately we're dealing with ourselves. We're dealing with Nigerians. We're dealing with look, for example, the blackout in the north. Social economic activities have been hampered. Industries have been shut down. Again, the pains, it's everybody's problem. It's not the national problem. So we need to get ourselves to that point, that realization to say, look, national assets are our assets. We need to protect them. In our local communities, in our villages, in our towns, it is when we do this, that's when we can enjoy the collective investment that we have put in this as a people and as a nation.
You know, one thing that seems to, the way it comes across listening to you is that we don't have thinking people in government. You know, because if we had, this infrastructure was not built yet today. It's been there for a long time. The same thing we see with several other public infrastructure. It just appears as though, who cares? And, you know, speaking about the laws, yes, they have the laws in place. But how can the authorities, are they inexcusable? Of course, I think they are inexcusable.
They are inexcusable.
That we can't monitor some of these assets. It means anyone can come from anywhere and sabotage us, and then the whole country is off. This is what it means.
Chamberlain, I agree with you. And I mean, I agree with you. But the challenge here, and it's always going to be the challenge, is how can, come to your house, let's paint a scenario. A thief enters your house with a mask, and you have your cameras, yeah? And you are in some location, you are seeing him do what he's doing. And when he's done, I mean, before you even get to the place, he's gone and he's done the damage he intended to do or he came to do. But you didn't see him. You only saw the actions, but you didn't see him. You can't apprehend him. So I imagine those remote locations, even though there are cameras, and let's not forget, technology has helped a lot. So there's scale at which we don't have. So we operate what you call a blind grid. SCADA infrastructure would have helped
all the
us.
experts we have in that
with
sector.
everybody,
No,
a blind grid.
A blind grid. It's been a very huge challenge. Whether you like it or not, that is the truth.
But we cannot continue to make these excuses for these
so
people.
they
This
have-
is government. Government is not us. Government is a machinery. Government has money.
Yeah.
Government is bigger than people. There's a reason why you are government and we are people. You're supposed to be able to think out of the box. You're supposed to come up with solutions that will baffle us. But like Chamberlain
Like the
said,
tax?
like Chamberlain said, it does feel like we don't have thinking people in government. So who are we looking at? And you know, how do we solve this now?
So Kayla, these things had, like we agreed, had come over time. Again, Chamberlain agrees, and we all agree that these infrastructures have been built like 30, 35, 40 years ago. Some of them are old, some need replacement. But you see, there's what you call the continuous maintenance of towers, I'm sure. Yeah, so towers are towers. You don't need to change the structure per se, but you can maintain the structure. You can ensure that the things that are failing are replaced.
Grease what needs to be greased and things
basically,
like that. Yeah.
And I'm saying if that maintenance culture fails, which has been over time, I mean, you are here, we're all Nigerians, we see what happens every day. So when you need to do what you need to do and you don't do it, it will come back. And that's exactly what's happening. And let's also bring the issue of the sufferings of Nigerians today. So poverty and a lot of the insecurity issues, they've all added in the mix to make it really compounded, right? So you have people who, when they vandalize government assets, they think they're taking their own share of the national cake because of where we are as a people in terms of the poverty, the hardship, and
maybe
all
because
of
of what they've seen some politicians do.
And I agree. Because, I mean, the politicians, and it's a wake-up call for everybody. The politicians know that we're getting to the end of this. If you don't begin to do what you need to do to serve your local community, to serve, why you were called to that position is because you needed to do what you needed to do. And if you're not doing it, then the repercussions are going to be really grave. So where we are at is we need to correct this quickly. All hands on deck, politicians, technocrats, and everybody in dealing with this.
So the president has directed area cover
Yes.
for those who are going to fix some of these assets. The question then is, now assuming that is done and then they fix it with the area cover, can we say for certain that this won't happen again?
So Chamberlain, I will answer this. So there was a vandalization that happened at some point, right? And then they fixed it today. And the next week, the very next week, that tower came down again. Why? Because if you don't have a consistent solution that works, we cannot have what they call those staggered solutions that would not. We have to have a consistent solution. So the Honorable Minister, all the key players in the sector must think of ways to say, how do we protect these assets even after they've been fixed? Recall that while this had not been fixed, especially the Shiroro-Kaduna-Kanu line, is because even the linesmen, their lives are at risk to come fix that stuff. So it means that even if they come, if there's no area cover, if there's no protection, police, army, and all of this, they will not be comfortable fixing those lines.
That security component, because I mean, at that meeting that they had, yes, I think the CDS was also there, but it doesn't come across as though there is that understanding within security agencies as to what is going on and why this should not even be allowed to happen. Because in some of the claims, you find certain experts in the power sector, they're part of your Secret Service. You have several kinds of people in Secret Service in different places to ensure that they point out these things way ahead of time. Do you think we have that figured out here?
I believe the challenges are poking us in the eyes, and then we must now begin to think of how to deal with this. Truly, maybe before now, but I know, Chamberlain, that all of us know that these things, as a matter of fact, it's in the public domain, it's in the public space that, look, protect these assets. These assets are being vandalized. And it started with maybe just conductors, and then it graduated to, and then now towers. It's actually very grave and bold. You have to be very bold to bring down a 33 kV tower. They are like monsters standing. Then you start cutting them, and all because you want to create chaos.
I mean, I don't know what to make of this situation, Chamber, because it doesn't feel like there's a solution. It doesn't feel like I can't feel a solution. I can't think of one. And listening to you as well, it does feel like in many ways, well, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
If we maintain the same infrastructure without alternative energy mix.
First of all, the infrastructure that was already created has its issue, right? Then we now have vandalism. Yeah. Then we now say, okay, let us repair it. Then after repairing it, it's most likely to be vandalized again. What can happen? What should happen? And I'm not talking about in the long run. I'm not talking about, we need to change people's orientation. That's something that takes time. As we are, we are where we are. So we are here now. What can happen now?
Okay, so what can happen now, right? I mentioned it in passing. One is that we've got radial lines feeding these areas, okay? We can create alternative lines feeding these areas. So that is a solution right now, okay? Right? So we create alternative lines. So instead of having a radial line, you have a ring, right? So if something happens, and anything can happen. I mean, in the US, it may not be vandalism, but it can be storm, it can be anything. But the lines don't come down because there's a backfeed coming from another place. So in our own case, it's vandalism and sabotage.
And there's no backfeed.
And sometimes, no, there is no backfeed. So because it's radial, you know what I mean? So I'm just going forward in one direction. If I cut this place, all of you guys are gone, right? That's it. So, but if I have another line feeding this place, it means that while I'm sorting this out,
you can feed from
I can feed from another point.
Okay. So, how is it? Because I mean, the end user, all they are usually bombarded with is appropriate pricing, tariff hike, this charge. For them to hear that, the chaps who are consistently talking about all of these charges, I'm not even thinking them to make sure that they all have their own end covered. So it's a challenge. But, you know, the Minister of Power, even though many wonder, they don't seem to understand what exactly the kind of impact he's having so far. Yes, we know some ministers, additional ministers, will be screened today. And then the question in terms of that is the yardstick for measurement for performance of some of these ministers, even though some are out. But the Minister of Power, for instance, I know everybody say, look, the yardstick is if I don't have it, it's clear, you're not doing much. So since you are in that sector, what can his own yardstick of success or failure be?
Thank you very much. It's a very important and very tricky question as well. So he is a finance person. He came into a very core technical ministry. Believe me, he's done very well. Very well because he was coming from some finance background, and technical ministries are beyond just administration. You have to have a deep understanding of it. And so he needed to have an understanding, and I think he's done pretty well. He speaks the language now. There is the jargons of the sector, and he's speaking the jargons now. He's understanding it. So believe me, he's done well. Now, he needs to be a lot more courageous. And trust me, he showed some courage in trying to say a few things, but the backlash was terrible for him. So,
like which one?
I know, I recall. I recall Chamberlain.
I don't recall. Help me out.
We can't remember.
When he was saying that, look, for us to manage power effectively, you need to shut down some appliances in your home.
Oh, that one.
Right. And he meant shutting down appliances like freezer, and then people grabbed the freezer and then killed him, right?
Yeah, because what's his business is almost shutting down freezer?
No, but
is he the one paying?
See, it's not fair what people are doing.
No, but what he said.
He had a point.
The point.
He has a point.
That's the point I was making.
Yes, he has a point. We do waste electricity.
Where he was coming from is that there's so much wastage.
Yes, we do waste electricity.
And that you need to shut down appliances you don't need.
Exactly.
Hold on. When you say wastage, let's try and put it in context. Is it that the discos give it for free to those, they didn't take it and then waste it? Or pay for this and then use it however they want? So in that context, can we call it wastage?
So, from your perspective, where your standpoint is the guy who is paying for all that he consumes. There are loads of people who are not paying for all that they consume. Why do we have over 50%?
But he lumped everybody on the same ship.
This is the
same brush.
No, we needed to put it in context, right?
He just didn't put it in.
Okay.
He didn't arrange it very well.
No,
but he had a point.
The point was clear, right? Let's manage electricity. It's an asset, it's something that you buy and you use it well. So manage it well. Don't waste it. Don't put all your lights on when you don't need them, all of them on. Don't put if you know your freezer is frozen to a point, you can switch it off for a bit.
You need a minister to tell us that. Your pocket will tell you if you don't do that.
But loads of people who bypass.
There are many people who bypass, so they don't know the value.
So the challenge with that is, how do we have loads of people when they should have metered everyone?
We're going back to
people
the same.
pay.
Yes.
So they are inexcusable again.
See, Chamberlain, you must understand that these things cost a huge sum in terms of, but we have local meter manufacturers who keep saying that these chaps are not coming to us to manufacture meters. They keep telling you they can't meter you, but in really and truly, they get a lot of money from estimated billing, and they don't provide the service as such. It's neither here nor there. And I agree with you, but again, to an extent.
No, it's there.
It's there. It's not neither here nor there. It's there.
The metering, again, government is actually doing a lot of work now. They want to meter everybody as much as they can. I mean, they put a budget in place. In the next 3 years, they want to be able to effectively meter everybody. Believe me, the revenue assurances will be clear, because once metering is done, monies are in, because with effective metering, you're able to track the losses. And if it's just technical losses, that's fine. But if it is commercial and collection losses, then that can be dealt with by effective metering.
I mean, we've seen from this ministry an increase in how much we pay for electricity. And I do have to say that in many ways, if you're on band A, you are getting more electricity than before. I can't say that they're sticking to the 20-hour rule, but you do get more electricity than you did before. Now, what we expected...
That's the one you pay for.
You pay for it. You have to pay for it.
Sure.
Four units for 1,000, So, but my thing is, with all that money that is coming in, and then we still have the same problems. We're still hearing grids are collapsing 3 times in a week in October.
Right.
So when we still see all of these problems happening and we're paying more, it makes you wonder, what's the money being used for? Is there some kind of explanation as to, where this extra money we're paying goes to? You
have to segment the sector,
yes.
Right? So you're paying to the discos who pay for the energy consumed, right? Upstream. So when you pay, you're not paying to TCN in a way. TCN still works with appropriation from government to build infrastructure. And so budgetary considerations are one thing. Funding those budgets, certainly is another kettle of fish. So we're able to budget, but we're not funding effectively. So these are the two sides. So I said segment the sector, Kayla, because the monies you pay is for the energy you consume, right? And that energy is paid for by the discos upstream, because recall that the generator must be paid because he gives you this electricity. So the generator generates it and the transmission company wheels it to you, and then the distribution company gives it to you to consume, and then the money goes back upstream. So the quantum of money that goes back upstream is what we should be looking at critically. Do they effectively pay for that upstream so that we are balanced here?
Let's talk about the IPP in Aba.
Yes,
because they've got a unique mix that bypasses the grid, and I think he can generate transmits directly to the end user without using the grid, transmission pipelines. And he's also said, he told us here that it takes about, we asked him, if a state wanted to do this, what is the timeline? He said 3 years, you can do it in 3 years. It means that if states or regions collaborate, they can solve this.
Totally in agreement with you, Chamberlain. That's why I said earlier that the willpower to do this is really lacking, and it's painful because government has given you a blanket platform to say, look, generate your own electricity, regulate yourself, create your regulatory agency, generate, dispatch to your people, and then make the revenue yourself, ring fence it to your state. But no, governors are busy doing all kinds of things but putting energy into this. If I am governor, I would say, listen, you, my commissioner for power or commissioner for energy, I give you 2 years or 1 year to give me a framework that works. All these things they're passing through, National Assembly has been taking God knows how long. They take this thing, they need to get the laws put in place. Chamberlain is all, I don't want to use the word, it's not nice. Governors should take this as a huge responsibility. The profits, or rather the advantages, are enormous. Why would you not find a way? Look at your state, study it, look at the energy mix that works for you. Start creating those structures, bring the investors, bring them to a round table, have a beautiful session that, look, we can assure you make your monies. And once all these frameworks are in place, people see that the investments are ring-fenced and their monies can come out. The monies will come.
So from your perspective, I mean, also being in that sector, do you think that we've got a private sector that can actually do this?
Yes, we have. We do have a private sector, but you know, private sector funding is they want to see their monies, they want to be able to see that it is ring-fenced, it is the revenue assurance, the pathways are sure. Don't come and say
their money, meaning the bills that the people will pay.
No,
they might likely pay more in some cases.
But if you Chamberlain, if you pay a little bit more and you have the energy, trust me, your self-generation is costing you so much. But if you have this collective generation, in your state, and even it's a little bit more, you cannot compare. You pay 200 and over 300% more than when you pay even a little bit more for a collective generation. And I'm saying every governor should look at this. Look at your energy mix. You know, there are many small hydros, they call them small hydros, scattered across the country. None of them are looking at these things. You can do 4 megawatts here, 3 megawatts here, to bring the investor.
With an abandoned windmill?
Okay,
the abandoned
I've seen that
windmill in Lambarimi.
Lambarimi. Oh, I know that. I saw it and I was laughing. Yes, it's been there and it's been a conduit. It is unfortunate. It's been a conduit for so many things, and it's not nice. For us, that windmill, the governor, Katsina State governor, if they choose, but trust me, it's the equipment they are long archaic. I can tell you this. I mean, let's not go and plunge money into the things that will not work. All right?
Another story for another time.
And that is the truth. That is the truth, Charlie.
Wow.
There's no solution.
I guess it rains. It pours, in fact. Well, thank you for coming on, King's Lord. I hope it didn't dampen your psychological makeup.
No, I am always on fire here.
All right, Business Morning comes up now.
Well, hello, welcome to the Tuesday trading session right here in Lagos, Nigeria. We know the week kicked off with profit-taking on the local bourse, but we'll see how it all plays out. Let's get to the top stories that set to agenda now. We'll see oil prices edged up today after a sharp plunge in the previous session. We see Brent crude there, 0.6% up, still holding on to that $70 range, $71.86 a barrel. The U.S. grade is also up with a bigger move, 0.7%. $67.83 a barrel. See if we can get a recovery, back to the $70 range. That's for US WTI. But we'll see pressure. There's a lot of pressure, sell pressure still in the market, regardless of this uptick we see this morning. Let's get a check on the FX market now. See the session that's for the close yesterday. NAFEX that depreciated about 0.28%, but a bigger drop for the end firm window, 1,670 naira. I was wondering if the 1,600 naira level would hold, but they gave up that gain there to 1,670 naira, down 4.42%, a big drop despite the interventions that we saw from the previous week into this week. But we'll see if maybe the central bank would get back in there and intervene, as usual. 1,670 for the NAFEX window, a smaller loss, about 0.28%. And definitely be looking at how the commodities market is reacting to this. Joining us to analyze price action, we have Dumebi Oluwole, Senior Analyst at Financial Derivatives Company. Hello, Dumebi. Great to have you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Yeah, so it seems the oil prices have recovered, but are the oil bulls out of the woods yet?
Well, not exactly. We're still pricing in a lot of supply shocks stemming from the geopolitical tensions that we've seen over the past few days and weeks escalate, both between Russia and Ukraine and Israel and Hamas. And both factors are seriously, impacting oil supply and also prices. So I guess right now, those are like the major issues currently affecting oil prices. And we do think that the market will continue to price those into oil prices in the coming months. I think an additional thing to also mention is OPEC's some level of, let's say, pessimism on a rebound in oil demand. And so we're also seeing them being very conservative with their oil supply. And we do think that as well will be factored into prices in the coming months, as well as sluggish demand from China as well.
Right. All eyes on demand from China this time and geopolitics on one hand. But let's look at the FX market. A big drop yesterday at the official window. Same old demand outstripping supply?
Yes, pretty much. We did see a significant decline in the average daily turnover at the official market, which is somewhat an indicator of supply of FX at the market, because the average daily turnover, what it does tell us is the level of market activities or transactions that are happening in the FX market, and people can only demand what is supplied, right? So in that sense, we do know that the market was tight, and that is the reason why we're seeing a sharp drop in the FX rate at the official market. I think worth mentioning is also the fact that we've seen significant pressures as well at the parallel market. And it's not too far-fetched when you consider the demand factors that are currently, applying pressure on the FX market. We do know we're entering into the festive season. Businesses are going to try to restock, to try to take advantage of high demand that will prop up towards the end of the year. We also know that the import waiver is still on. Businesses are also trying to take advantage of that. We're also seeing some level of increase in FX from people that are trying to travel abroad, to travel demand basically towards the end of the year as well. So these are a couple of things that we're seeing, impact demand for FX at the market. And we do think that in order to somewhat stabilize the market ahead of the MPC meeting that will be coming up later on in November, we do think that the CBN will, somewhat intervene by probably having FX sales like it did in October, like it did in September, and also at the beginning of October, both to BDCs and also to authorized dealers, commercial banks as well. And then possibly might be another retail Dutch auction to somewhat clear some of the FX backlogs that we do know has been resident with commercial banks for a couple of months.
All right, all eyes on the next meeting. Consensus, maybe another hike or maybe a hold at the next meeting. We'll definitely be looking out for that. Thank you so much, Dumebi Oluwole, Senior Analyst, Financial Derivatives Company. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, now let's delve into the world of aviation with a focus on two dynamic players in the industry. That's Neos Air and SkyMaster Services. We'll explore Neos Air's recent expansion into the Lagos-Milan routes, uncovering the motivations behind this decision and their details of their operations. Join us for this conversation. We have Mr. Ogbonna Prince, who is the MD, SkyMaster Services, joining me right here in the studio. Great to have you.
Hi.
Yes, and I know...
Nice meeting you.
Yeah, it's nice meeting you too. And I know Milan is the fashion capital, and you're looking the part, you know, at this point with this nice blazer you're wearing. But talk to me about this partnership, News Air and Sky Master Services.
Yeah, good morning. It's fantastic to be here with you.
Great to have you.
And we're excited because Nigerians in Europe and in Milan can now heave a sigh of relief to be able to fly direct from the western part of Europe down to here, 5 hours. And we are fantastically okay with what Airpeace is doing to be able to open up the industry. That tells you what the present government is doing to be able to open the market. The minister has done tremendously well, I must say this. NEOS got into business 2001 in order to be able to provide specialized aviation services. And our relationship with them is fantastic because we chose them strategically because of this market. Nigeria is a very important market. Presently, NEOS flies to Dakar, and some of the studies we did, 60% of the traffic going through Dakar from Milan are also Nigerians that are not being treated fairly. And we spend money to make other people, rich, and we don't get good service. So we decided to be able to open up this route. Of course, it's been followed. Nobody has been there since the end of Alitalia and Air Italia. So, like you rightly quoted, the fashion capital of Europe is Milan. And also, there's a strategic thing you must understand. Nigerians are also playing in that industry. Several things that are being brought in here or made here to go to Europe will now find its way in Europe, directly. So this flight is going to be a very, strategic flight to be able to connect Nigerians directly to Europe without passing through Addis or even Qatar. So 5 hours.
To my next question. Yes. You were painting a picture there of what the route was like.
Yes.
Before this.
Yes.
I'm sure. How many hours were we looking at?
We're looking at 5 hours and some minutes to be able to be in Europe without a stopover or a layover, which is fantastic. And the rates are going to be so nice, just like what Airpeace is doing. I keep mentioning Airpeace because Nigeria is, anchoring around Airpeace to do well. So Sky Masters bringing news into the market is also to open up the windows to give people options of being able to be into Europe without stopping over anywhere and connecting other destinations. And that also opens up Nigeria for additional people to take here as a destination because of what we are doing. This government is doing to be able to open up the industry. So it's important to let people know that it's now ready. The market is ready. The aviation sector is ready. And we are going to also go into some relationships which we have kept with aero contractors to be able to distribute passengers as they arrive here within there.
Quite interesting.
Customer service is what we are looking at for this operation.
All right, let's look at the frequency now.
Yes.
How many flights are we going to be looking at?
We're starting with 1 flight a week every Wednesday. Then as we grow, we are expanding to 2 or 3 flights a week as we watch the market. We are going to be strategic about our development and how we enter into code-share relationships, which is fantastically important in this industry.
I'm talking about watching the market. What kind of demand are you expecting for this route?
Well, Nigerians are business people. They are traveling, tourism. Even the church, the Catholic church that goes up to Rome, will now find this flight very, very enjoyable to get to Milan, Malpensa, and be able to connect Rome. We will be able to help them to get to their destinations. Then people who are looking at cheaper ways of flying and safer ways of flying directly without connecting or sleeping at the airport will also find this flight operations a fantastic thing to do. I wouldn't forget the role CFAX has played here. They may be a handling company, but they have been very fantastic in this, making sure that this operation commences to be able to give Nigerians a sigh of relief.
Because I know connecting flights can be quite stressful,
yes.
And you have to wait at the airport.
Exactly.
And, sometimes sleep and wait for long hours. That's grueling. But talk to me about this route. Now, how long are you planning to operate this route? Is this some kind of temporary arrangement?
No. This is a long haul we are going into. We've done our studies, we've done our plans, we have put things in place, and we have strategically put fundings in place as well. Polaris is doing a fantastic job with us. So we want to see how we can put customer service as first. I enjoy personally competitions, but healthy ones. Let's be able to give the customers, the type of, service they deserve, where they are put first. It's important we understand that. And mainly, Nigerians who are heavy travelers, serious travelers, we are trying to also make sure that Europe sees them as viable travelers, not just as people who are spending their money without getting anything.
Right. And I'm talking about spending money. I remember when the Naira, was stronger than what it is, right now, the price of business class is like the price of economy, right now. So we're needing more Naira, to get most of these tickets. Talk to me about affordability.
We have structured the pricing to be affordable. And let me also say this, in as much as I'm not a politician, I am enjoying what is going on in the industry currently, that the current minister is doing, and the current government is trying to do, even though it's a bit difficult. But we are beginning to see light at the end of the tunnel, whereby people can spend reasonable, limited funds and get some services. That's why people, companies like us can be able to thrive now and also have relationships. So our pricing is structured to be able to be affordable, not just skyrocketing, for people to have, to be able to be in Europe at a reasonable rate. So we've considered that very well.
I'm talking about people that are trying to be in Europe. Talk to me about your target market.
Okay. Nigerians, the Southeasterners, Aba, Onitsha, Owerri, are heavy importers. They bring in their leathers to be able to produce the shoes and all that. And like you rightly pointed out, the fashion headquarters in Europe, which is Milan, we're able to fuse it together with Nigerian market, which is growing tremendously in the fashion side of it. So those are one of the target markets. Then religious pilgrimage, people who go for their holy ceremonies in Rome. And also, very, very importantly, the oil and gas and manufacturing. There's a lot of the presence of Italian multinational companies operating here. We're also going to be dealing with the multinationals directly to be able to tailor the services we provide to meet their demands. So we are looking at, and all those tourism, which is very, very important. Milan and Italy is a major destination. Nigeria is an untapped market that we're also going to look into. Even though we're in aviation, we're trying to add a desk for tourism, how we can work with Italians to be able to deal with that. And more importantly, we're also looking out for security issues where migrants, drugs are not, Nigeria is not going to be we are not going to be people that could be used. So we are going to work with the agencies that are concerned to be able to curb that while we grow this market, which is important to grow.
And we know it's either people that are moving or goods. So talk to me, is it just passengers we're looking at?
Well, we are not a cargo company,
right?
But people move. Nigerians are heavy spenders when it comes to purchases. So we have space. We've reduced the seating capacity to 145 to be able to accommodate people's, nobody will have a leftover like what they experience in other places, other airlines. I don't want to mention names, but we want to be able to make sure that people go with what they have that is reasonable back and forth this market.
All right, and are we looking at other airports in Nigeria?
Well, as we expand, Abuja is a tremendous market. Port Harcourt, which is where our home state is, we've been enjoying, the support of the government before, the former governor, was, did a lot there, and the current governor, I guess, is doing so much in the industry. So we've made Port Harcourt our home base, and Port Harcourt is going to be fantastically. We are not forgetting the north, but these are the catchy points where we can have markets. We will expand in doing that. But we are looking at working with aero contractors in this regards to be able to distribute passengers across, and other airlines that we may find better. But we chose aero because they have their AMOs, where we can also have services done here if the aircraft has issues that may come up. So we are looking at a lot of things that we can.
Yeah, I'm sure you're looking at a lot of things, and I'm sure you can also paint a picture of what you're seeing, for this route, going forward, and other expansion plans at this point.
It's going to be a boom. With what I'm seeing that the minister is doing, Lagos will become a major hub pretty soon. If with what I'm seeing being done, Abuja can follow suit. We need to take advantage of our numbers, how we travel. I'm from the southeast, from Abia. We are merchants, we are traders, we move around a lot. So we are looking at how to work with the Europeans. We don't stand alone. We work with the Europeans to be able to create that movement. Let's begin to look at the things we can do. We can work with FAN to be able to create duty-free shops within the airport, to be able to expand people's, having time to shop around while they wait for their flights. There are a couple of things we are looking at that we can delve into, but let's focus on our opening, which is going to be...
And I'm sure that's kicking off tomorrow.
Yes. In a low key, but very nice.
We'll definitely be looking forward to that. Thank you so much, Mr. Ogbonna Prince Will, Managing Director, Sky Master Services.
Yes, please. Let it be on that one.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll continue the conversation right after this break. We're going to be looking at financial services. That's in a moment. Just stay with us. All right, now let's analyze the pivotal role of the insurance sector in Nigeria's economic landscape. I'll begin with an overview of the association and its mission before diving into how the insurance industry aligns with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's renewed hope agenda. To help us unpack this, I have Mr. Kunle Ahmed. He's the 26th chairman, Nigerian Insurers Association. Join me right here in the studio. It's great to have you.
Great to be here, Ladi.
Yeah, so talk to me about this association, and congratulations.
Thank you.
On this new role.
Thank you. So Nigerian Insurance Association is the umbrella body of all insurance companies in Nigeria, insurance company and reinsurance company in Nigeria. It's been about 53 years old association, and we pay attention to all issues that concerns insurance business in Nigeria, and the arrangement of insurance and the relationship with government and management, ensuring that insurance companies follow the principles of insurance and serve our customers and potential customers fairly.
And, looking at the macros at this time, we're dealing with a cost of living crisis. We'll see inflation, at levels we've not seen in a long time. We're seeing currency devaluation. All of these three, hammering on businesses and individuals. So talk to me about how the insurance sector can actually help in navigating, these headwinds to achieve this $1 trillion economy for Nigeria.
Let me start by saying that in thriving or trying times, the solution that you need is insurance. And I think it's in the realization of the importance of insurance and what insurance can do in terms of helping the government to achieve its agenda that we've seen a lot of attention being paid by this government to the practice of insurance in Nigeria. I've been in the State House at least twice in the last 1 month to discuss issues concerning insurance. But directly to your question, insurance gives wings, provide wings to businesses to fly. And we pay critical attention to the sectors of the economy to give them support. I'll give an example. Agriculture is very important to our economy. And we can provide solutions, insurance solutions for flood, for drought, for the agri sector to allow farmers to be able to produce and thereby support the growth of the economy and the ambition of the government. We provide critical support for critical side of the economy, like energy, like transportation. With insurance, you are focused just on investment, just on creating new areas, new frontiers, breaking barriers. You have more confidence to continue to invest, to innovate, and expand, believing that you have a cover for you in the event of unfortunate or unforeseen circumstances.
And talking about that cover, some would say it's going to cost me money to get this cover, at this point. Why don't I, take that money and channel it, into my business at this time, because I'm not getting that much demand and business is not going as well. What do you say to that kind of?
The issue is that what you pay as insurance premium is a tiny proportion of the value that insurance company will take care of if the unforeseen circumstances arises. For example, if you insure your building, you pay something like 0.2% of the value of the building, assuming your building cost 100 million. What you pay is a tiny amount. And if anything happens to the building, the insurance company will pay the full amount of that building to you. Of course, there are other exceptions.
And, talking about, flooding, you did mention flooding.
Yes.
Earlier, I've seen some homes where people have been, sacked from their homes because of the floods, even, around us here. What kind of a plan can such a person have to, to save their property and also, help them maybe find some other accommodation?
The simple policy that they need is a fire insurance policy, fire and special perils insurance policy. That policy will cover them for fire and other perils, like drought, like flooding, like impact on their building, like several other cover that comes around fire and special perils. And like I said, the premium for that particular risk is very tiny compared to the risk that insurance company will carry eventually.
Right, and you also mentioned, trying times, and I want to believe that trying times also come with a lot of claims. Is the insurance industry able to absorb most of the claims that we're seeing at this time?
We are able to absorb all claims, and thanks to that particular question, because a lot of our viewers and the investing public doesn't understand the practice of insurance. Insurance capacity is not limited to the shareholders fund or the fund or the capital of the insurance company. Insurance companies' capacity also include the reinsurance capacity that they bought. So you can have a very a medium-sized insurance company being able to take very large risk. Now, talking directly about claims. Last year, the industry recorded premium income of about 1 trillion naira. We paid claims of about 546 billion naira, about 54% of the premium that we wrote last year. That shows that it's no longer about whether insurance company pay claims. No, that is no longer the question. Insurance company pay claims. What we are paying a lot more attention to is the customer journey from onboarding to claims to ensure that claims payment is seamless and our insurance public are paid, within a very short period of time.
Because some, you hear some customers say that, before I can get that claim, I have to bring the beard of a grasshopper, at this time to actually make that. So it's gotten easier.
It is a lot easier today. It's a lot easier today. And the challenge for us is to make it even easier than it is today. For example, if your car is stolen, in the past, it used to take about 90 days before your claim is paid. Today, it is 60 days for most companies. I know a couple of our members that are now targeting 30 days, so that will give time for whether the car will be found or, to ensure that documentations are completed and all that. So things are improving gradually, and with technology and digital disruptions, we believe that the sky is the beginning.
Right. And what would you say are the challenges facing your industry, right now? You're looking at currency devaluation and all of that.
There are several challenges that we face, and I'll put it in 2 buckets. The couple of historical challenges that we are taking care of already, inability to attract, talent outside, our industry, less footprints in terms of accessibility and distribution channels. But there are a couple that I think I still need to talk a bit more about. Number one is the fact that insurance business in Nigeria is still being governed through outdated laws. That these outdated laws inhibit our ability to be creative, our ability to focus on things that will move the industry forward. I'm happy that the National Assembly is currently taking care of that with the Nigerian insurance reform bill at the National Assembly. Hopefully, that will be taken care of. And
you think it's going to scale?
I believe very strongly that it's going to scale. It's past the second reading. We've had a public hearing. So I believe very strongly that we'll see that will see the light of the day. Another problem that we face is the fact that there's low insurance awareness. And this cut across, all strata of the society. You might think some educated people will understand how insurance business works, but that has been a major challenge that we face. One particular issue that usually causes a lot of challenges with our insuring public is a global term called excess. Excess is that portion of the claim that the insured bears when there is a claim. And most companies usually bring this to fore when we sell insurance products to the customers. But yet, it's a big issue when there's a claim, and people believe that you have not indemnified me to the extent of my loss. The third one is the perception of fraud, and by both the insurance company and the insured. You might not believe that. The insurance companies, the insurers believe that insurance companies are just there to not to pay claims. That perception is still there somewhat. But insurance companies also believe that insuring public, when there is a loss, always want to make more than the loss that they've suffered. That challenge is there, and I think the industry is trying to manage both sides of the divide. So that the major challenges that I see. So how
do you think
but the most important one, Ladi, is the economic challenge.
Yes, right.
The fact that there are challenges with the economy, increase in prices of energy and petrol, the purchasing power of people is now a bit limited.
Because I believe inflation will be a major headache
for
insurance, because
it is.
You might price the claim at repairing something at this price, but the next thing the prices go up again. So how do you create some kind of buffer against that?
I think, Ladi, we should give you an insurance certification for this particular question. I think it's a major problem because this year we've seen average claim cost increase fourfold. Average claim cost. So, for example, maybe 2 years ago, what you spend $3,000 to fix would now cost us about $12,000 to fix, and premium has not increased, in that manner. The challenge for us is to continue to grow the business, because the bigger the top line, the better you can absorb cost, and the better you can innovate in terms of how you pay claims, and the bottlenecks around claims payment.
Right, and in the financial services sector, you've seen the banking side, they having to recapitalize. Yes. How's the insurance doing? Are the companies okay when it comes to capitalization?
I believe that the insurance companies will also recapitalize. There is a provision in the reform bill at the National Assembly that stipulates that insurance companies must recapitalize. I don't know the final figure that the government will agree on, but the capital today is 2 and 3 billion. 2 billion for life companies, 3 billion for non-life company. That is very small. I believe that by the time that law is passed, the capital for insurance companies will increase significantly.
Right, and we have a couple of insurance companies listed on the local bourse. What are you seeing? It's Q3, everyone's looking out for results. Are you seeing strong results coming out from most of the insurance companies?
I'll base my analysis on what we saw in H1 at the end of Q2. Because you're not allowed to reveal your results except on the floor of the
estate. Of course, yeah.
I think with what we've seen at the end of Q2, the insurance bourse is going to be very active. There are very nice results being put out to the public,
right?
And I believe that we'll see, that trend will continue. Hoping that
regardless of the headwinds,
hoping that we won't see very large claim happening between now and the end of the year.
Right. All right. So let's look towards the future. At this time, what are you seeing in the next 5 to 10 years for this industry?
With 1% of Nigerians holding an insurance policy, with 1%, less than 1% penetration rate in Nigeria, and with the population that we have, I believe that the future for insurance is very bright. our GDP the contribution of insurance to GDP has increased, has improved. It was 3% in the last 5 years. As at Q2 2024, it was 0.52. That shows some improvement. I believe very strongly with the passage of the law on insurance that we talked about, the implementation of the 10-year industry strategic plan that is being put together by the whole industry with the National Insurance Commission. I think that will open a lot of opportunities, and I believe very strongly that insurance contribution to the GDP will increase to about 1.9% by 2030.
Right, and one thing I forgot to ask you about, this is a high interest rate environment. How is that impacting business?
It's impacting business a lot. We're seeing a decrease in what I call credit life or credit policies. There's been a remarkable decrease in the number of policies that we see, and that's because banks are not advancing loans like they used to before. That might, of course, that's as a result of the high interest rate. But there are other things we need to do. There are people that have assets already that we need to show clearly, or we need to show value to in terms of what insurance can do. And that's some of the things we'll be paying attention to from the Nigerian Insurance Association. Right, and we'll definitely be hoping for the very best. But, with your leadership now, what can we expect with your leadership? Progress. I'll be paying a lot of attention to digital disruption. I think my sector, being a very traditional sector, has been the slowest in embracing digital transformation. The plank of my tenure will be digital disruption. We'll be doing a lot of advocacy, ensuring that government agencies put insurance in their plan as they make plans and put plans in place. Insurance is a pillar of those plans. Those are the two major things we'll be looking at in the course of my tenure. And I'm sure artificial intelligence will come up at some point. That will be under digital transformation. Thank you so much. It was great having your perspective. That was Mr. Kunle Ahmed, is the 26th chairman, Nigerian Insurers Association. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Daddy. Nice to be here. All righty then. So that's the show today. The markets are open. We'll give you a summary of what's playing out, and definitely we'll have a surprise on Business Incorporated. That's at 1 p.m. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Lade Williams. I hand things over to the Sunrise Daily team.
Welcome back to Sunrise. Yes, as you've seen there in that welcoming slide, we do have Mr. Mohammed Malik Fall here with us. He is the UN Resident and Humanitarian Coordinator in Nigeria. Good morning, and thank you for coming on today.
Good morning, and thank you for having me in your program.
Yeah, incidentally, your second coming to the country. Good to have you back.
Thank you, and happy to be back home.
Yeah, so talk to us about, yes, we know UN Day, humanitarian issues, those challenges are always there, unfortunately. But a good thing that the UN is there. But tell us about maybe at least a broader perspective about the significance of when we say UN Day. Because if not, people just think, okay, just another day. What is the significance of such days?
Let me just say it's a very important day. For us and for the people. It's the 79th anniversary of UN. It is celebrated under the topic of global unity and sustainable development. And it's coming at a time where really the world is shaken by conflict, by climate-related crisis, by economic hardship, making people's life much more difficult. And I think that resonates to many people as a time where we need to recommit to what was the goal and the principle and the founding principle of UN, which is peace, which is security, which is human rights protection, which is also poverty alleviation. There are a number of things that are so core to the UN principle that make this celebration particular. And if you see the world, how it is today, War is almost coming back in different continents, solving dispute. We are going back to now using guns and using warfare to solve difference and dispute. And let's remember that UN was created in the aftermath of the worst war, which was the Second World War. And we commit to the people of the world to build peace, to build security, to promote development, to promote God-given rights. This is why the celebration of this year is extremely important.
You've had vast experience in this kind of scenario. So tell us, do you see, is there more, are people maybe here and globally, are they connecting more to the ideals of UN? Are they identifying more with the UN? Are they taking them on board, or do you still feel people are still treating and relating with them at arm's length over time?
Let's see, it depends on the angle you see it.
Okay.
As I say, we are seeing war coming back in a way that was not witnessed since the Second World War. If you look at today, the situation in the Middle East, the situation in Europe with the Ukraine crisis, but crisis everywhere. You look at Sudan, and even here near to us, I mean, the crisis in the Sahel, with extreme violence, with terrorism. You have a number of ingredients that give the impression that people are moving away from the ideal of UN. And that's what makes it important that the global community recommit to UN, recommit to the principle of solidarity, recommit to the principle of multilateralism. That's one aspect. But let's not forget also, as we see war ravaging different parts of the world, as we see the climate crisis driving or increasing suffering, as we see economic hardship impacting on people's life, it is time also to give much greater weight to that notion of solidarity and that notion of multilateralism. And I wanted to just say that when people look at UN, they tend to maybe focus on the Security Council and the difficulties of making decisions to stop the war. But let's not forget that there is another side of the coin, which is the humanitarian intervention, for example, for UN. I don't know how many millions of people, number of people who suffer from different form of need of humanitarian assistance has increased from 80 million to maybe 300 million in less than a decade, giving the space for humanity to express itself. And I think that's also that dimension of UN that I always want to highlight. We talk often about the meetings of the Security Council that are unable to make a decision, the meeting of the General Assembly. But let's not forget also the people who every single day, on behalf of that ideal of providing humanitarian assistance, take the risk of their life, work out of their way to reach the last people and provide them with support. Let's not forget that also within the humanity, you have communities. I was recently in Maiduguri when the flood hit. Yeah. One thing that struck me most was to see the community who have nothing, but who are preparing like 2,000 hot meals per day just to come in support of those displaced people. For me, that's what I call the space where humanity is finding expression. And I think that's the space also that UN contribute to create, with its staff, with its presence in the field, but with its presence also near to the community that are the most suffering.
I mean, you just talked about that humanitarian situation that we had in Borno following the flooding. I want to be able to get you to tell us a little bit about some other interventions by the United Nations in Nigeria, ongoing and planned, let's say for this year, because we do have a situation where poverty is rife, and like you did say, many people probably look at the UN and just think of the Security Council. But let's bring it down to where we are as a people in Nigeria. What are those interventions that you have ongoing right now, and what are some of the planned interventions across the country?
Thanks for bringing more precision to the question of the humanitarian assistance. We talk about the flood because these are the recent events that we have seen. By the way, Borno was a broken dam that have created the flood, but we have seen that heavy rain, we have seen that swelling river also have created flood in different parts of the country. As we speak, we are talking about over 1.2 million people affected. And this is just the flood, but the flood is coming on top of some other hardship. Let's not forget that in the context of Borno, the states, and not only the state of Borno, but the state of Borno, Yobe, Adamawa, are going through a protracted crisis linked to the insurgency of Boko Haram. And this has been lasting for maybe the last 15 years, creating displacement of people, creating destruction of livelihood, killing people, moving people into IDP setting. All of these are suffering through which UN has been intervening. I would say that UN for the past 10 years has been supporting over 5 million people in those 3 states in different ways. It could be supply of food, it could be health support, it could be treatment of malnutrition, it could be supply of water and sanitation, which is so critical for the well-being of the people. But I just wanted to add that unfortunately, when we talk about suffering and hardship, it's mostly seen probably in the northeast, but let's not forget that also the northwest of the countries is going through difficulties, through challenges. We have seen the banditry, we have seen sometimes the rising insecurity, how it's impacting not only the people's life, but their livelihood also. We have seen intercommunal violence, sometimes herders and farmers, leading to massive displacement, leading to massive loss of livelihood and life. We have seen in different parts of the country, hotspot and pocket, where insecurity is impacting deeply on people's life. UN engagement in those kind of situations is twofold. One is how to race against time to save people's life, reduce their vulnerability, enhance the protection, mainly the protection of the most vulnerable, the women, the children, the elderly, people living with disability. But the other aspect of UN work also is how to address the root causes of those crises. Because no crisis comes exacerbated like we see it. It always comes on top of deficit of access to service, deficit of development, prolonged or deep poverty, inequalities. UN works also through the Sustainable Development Goal into development processes that can also in a longer term or address those kind of situations.
You've played pivotal roles in post-disaster scenarios globally. Now, for Maiduguri, which you've been, and the thing is, there are people who may have moved on from Maiduguri because the medium or platform that they get their information from might have moved on. So they might not have the proper picture of what's going on there. So could you just tell us who needs to do what in Maiduguri to make sure that at least those issues are addressed? Because something has been addressed.
Yes, but I think it's a partnership. I think the leading role has to be taken by the state. What I call the state, the Executive Council of Borno, and we have seen the Governor Zulum showing outstanding leadership in guiding the response in the immediate aftermath of the flood. But I think prior to that, we have seen also the state taking a leading role in settling the crisis that the state is facing for more than 15 years now. And I can talk largely about it. When I came to Nigeria first, like 2015-16, number of local government area in Borno State was under the control of the insurgency. But if you look at from that time to today, those 10 years, you have seen that peace has progressed, security has progressed, the control of government is now in the entire state. Those are progress that I should highlight coming from the leadership of the government. But it's not only the government, it's also the security forces, it is the civil society, it's the local organization. I refer earlier to the solidarity and the generosity shown by the community. It's the international partner, but it's also the private sector. Including when the recent flood happened, you have seen so many philanthropists, so many private sector leaders who step in and provided support. And I feel that the kind of challenge we have today doesn't have boundary and is not limited to the responsibility of the state. The international community come in support of the state, but the support is also building on forces like the community, like the civil society, like the private sector. Every segment of society have part in the response that need to be given to those people.
I mean, looking at the situation on ground, you did mention the number of people that interventions are trying to reach or reaching already in Nigeria. But we do have a peculiar problem. We have rising inflation. There's a poverty level that is increasing. There's crime and criminality that is on the rise as well. Do you think that we're going to have a worse humanitarian situation, let's say in the next year or so? Because for many people, we just feel like things are about to get worse. So the country is in a lot of trouble. How are we going to handle everything when it comes to a head? Do you see a future where we have bigger humanitarian issues in Nigeria?
It's difficult for me to predict what the situation will be 1 year down the line. But what I can say is that the factor that triggered the humanitarian needs and the humanitarian or the human suffering, they are several-fold. Conflict, security is something that we have spoken about. I mentioned earlier the climate crisis. You have seen now, land degradation, heat wave, flood, drought. You have seen the Lake Chad shrinking. And those aspects of the climate and the environment degradation could also be a leading factor. Of course, the economy is also something that needs to be fixed. And I believe that being in my position and engaging with different segments of the international community, we are all happy about the bold reform that was taken by the government of Nigeria, mainly the new administration, by trying to fix the macroeconomy, because this is what will create conducive conditions for a development of the country. But what happened is that those measures have ripple effect that was not controlled in terms of, for example, inflation or in terms of rise of food prices. And those need to be addressed. And we are, as UN, working with the government to support them through a kind of direct payment program they have. Some call it cash transfer. And I feel that if that program is scaled up, if that program is target well those who are most suffering currently, this could be a kind of mitigation way as we wait for maybe the result of the reform that are already undertaken. Now, how this will evolve in the month and the week to come, most economists believe that by the time we reach the end of the year and early next year, you will see the inflation coming down. We will see maybe food prices coming down. And I feel that if this is combined with some of the social mitigation measures, this will maybe improve the situation of the people. As we also look at the climate-related crisis or some other form of crisis, I think also preparedness is important. Because what are the cause of the flood? Most of the time, it's people are settled in places that are prone to flood. Most of the time, it's maybe an issue of maintaining the infrastructure that regulates the water system. Most of the time, it is also setting up a system that helps to, on time, the people so that they can move away from the place where the disaster takes place. And all of these things are processes in which we are working with the government of Nigeria, both at federal and state level.
So tell us, what are the challenges that maybe UN and maybe your partners face in ensuring that you address some of these problems, these challenges adequately?
Let's say the challenges are several-fold. You have some that are linked to access to people who need our support. Okay. Let's say if you have a security challenges and or a security impediment that does not allow you or your staff or your partner to reach the hardest to reach, that's a challenge. I think improving access in this regard is important. I see also funding becoming a problem because, let's face it, I mean, the world is facing unprecedented time in terms of humanitarian assistance need. You look at Gaza today or Lebanon, those two places can absorb the entire resources that the international community mobilized for humanitarian assistance, not to mention Ukraine or Sudan. And in this very competing environment, making the case and attractive funding for a country like Nigeria become more and more difficult. And we have seen year by year our humanitarian assistance funding, our humanitarian response appeal funding shrinking and going down. We have launched a lean season plan to race against malnutrition of children and food insecurity for this current lean season. And we have seen that it was 306 million that we have appealed for. I think until recently, we have not even reached 35% of funding. And the humanitarian response plan must be around 40% funding. And this is mirroring the global trend we have seen. Globally speaking, I don't think the humanitarian appeal for the world have reached 40% funding, and we are almost 3 years before the end of the year. I think funding become also another issue which is an impediment to our appropriate or adequate response to the humanitarian need.
I mean, interventions, are supposed to be temporary. They're not supposed to be a way of life. Countries cannot survive on interventions, right? At some point, you have to look within and transition to a country where people are doing well, as opposed to always expecting help. And I noticed over the years that the UN keeps giving help in many, especially in the Northeast. Let's look at that right now. Would you look at that situation over the years? You've been here for quite a bit, working with UNICEF and now as resident coordinator for the UN. Is there progress being made?
Indeed, progress has been made. But that's why in the beginning I was saying that the UN support should be seen with a kind of twofold approach. The first one is how you race against time to save life. When, for example, there is a disease outbreak, there is a flood, there is a massive displacement due to conflict or insecurity, the people most urgent need is to survive. Mainly the survival of the most vulnerable, which I mentioned earlier. Then you have to look at the root causes of what brought this fragility.
In your view, are those root causes being addressed?
This is what I was going to come to. They are being addressed by looking at development and medium and longer term development process. Okay. By looking at what the root causes of this fragility are. By looking at what kind of planning process should put on track these community, these state, these people toward achieving development goal. And that's what the Sustainable Development Goal is about. The global community have adopted them in 2015 for 2030 to reach zero hunger, to reach universal access to health, to reach universal access to water and sanitation, to education, you name it. But those were goals that was set for putting the countries and the communities and the society in the path to development. But as you get into this, sometimes you are interrupted by events or by incidents that need to be addressed also. And that's the whole notion of agility that we put in our approach. Because as you are trying to address root causes toward longer term development, sometimes you are interrupted. Like, for example, in Borno State, we have launched the State Plan for Durable Solution, which was to stop the pouring humanitarian resources without looking at the root causes of underdevelopment. And as we launched them in May, and by the way, Nigeria was the first country to launch those state plan out of an initiative of 15 countries that the Secretary General of UN took for a durable solution for displaced people. As we started that process with the commitment of the government, with the commitment of the private sector, with the mobilization of the bilateral and the international financial institution, then we got the flood that hit us. Of course, it could trigger a setback because it took us back to humanitarian assistance, but we did it in a way that it was just a bracket of few weeks, and then we go back to the process of building medium and longer term development through this durable solution.
Well, clearly, I mean, we all have a role to play. Media, government, private sector, to support issues like this, for which UN and humanitarian agencies are all there for. So we have to thank you for coming on, and we do hope that whatever time, whenever we can, we will always contribute a lot to make sure we contribute to the humanitarian work of the UN. So thank you, Mr. Fall, for coming this morning.
Thank you very much. And if you allow me, I will end with one word by just calling the major our allies. Because I think whatever we do need to be known. Whatever we do need mobilization. Whatever we do need the information to reach the last mile.
Yeah.
And I think there is no one who can do it better than the major. That's why I say that if we have one critical ally in our endeavor, in our work, it's the major. And that's why I'm happy also to be given this opportunity to be part of your program. Thank you.
And we're glad to have you on anytime.
Thanks.
All right, so there you go. That is the show today. We do thank you all for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain Osop. Goodbye.
Have a great day ahead. I'm Kayla Megwa.